So let's start with a little parable. So there's a 5-year-old girl. She's in the kitchen of her parents' house. She's hungry. She climbs up on the kitchen bench and she sees there are 2 apples left in the fruit bowl. She grabs one in her left hand and one in her right hand. And at that moment, her mother walks in and says, "Sweetie, can I have one of those apples?" The child looks at her mother, looks at the apples and proceeds to bite the one in her left hand, and then she bites the one in her right hand. The mother just shakes her head. She can't believe this child has been so selfish. It's at that moment the little girl holds out the one in her left hand and she says, "Here you go, Mummy. This is the sweeter one." Aww. Some of you are wishing that was your kid. It's not mine, I can tell you that. So the first answer is that if you want people to embrace change, you must always, always, always assume a noble intention. Always. You may not accept the behavior or the impact, but you must always assume a noble intention. When you assume someone is up to no good, right? When you question their intent, you are effectively questioning their character. And when you do that, they are forced to defend themselves. They become rigid and immovable. They become unchangeable. So when you do what I do for a living, everybody I work with has a much bigger job than me. And yet, my living relies on them taking my advice and insight. And so as a way of life, I have learned to accept that everybody starts with a noble intent. This may shock some of you, but I've never met the leader who aspires to destroy shareholder value, irritate customers and alienate staff, even though many are quite successful at doing that, right? They start the day with noble intentions. Now, here's what you will find if you do that as a way of life. You will find that 80% of the time, people do always start with a noble intention. No matter how that behavior shows up, their intent is noble. 20% of the time, it may not be noble, but there can be all sorts of reasons for that. Maybe they've been burnt too many times before. Maybe they're just exhausted. Maybe they had a bad morning. But the interesting thing is, when you approach them as though they do have a noble intent, 80% of them will behave nobly. Now you have 96, 97%, if my math's correct, of people behaving nobly. Those who don't behave nobly, you can treat by exception. So if you were to follow me or my colleagues around for a day, you would never hear us say, "That's good leadership, that's bad leadership. That's good strategy, that's bad strategy." We just say, given your aspirations, that's not very helpful. That's not aligned with what you said you want. Would it be helpful if I gave you some strategies to become more aligned? And now you have someone who's open and ready to change.